LOS40.
The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And, you're talking about housing problems, that's the reason. But no one's really talking about that because they're feeding disinformation or amplifying information so that no one starts thinking about that. It's their fault. Blame them. Up to date, for playing the sort of same songs for years on end got a little tedious. So to update it and then having an updated show, including the tipping point tracks, we kind of wanted to then record them. The initial idea was the film. But then the recording sounded so good and the band sounded so good, we decided to make a live album out of it. And then the question was, do we really want to just be talking about the live record? And the record company asked us whether we'd do one or two new bonus tracks. They called them bonus tracks at that point, which is kind of a vehicle to sell a record. We ended up doing 4. And we felt so strongly about them that we kind of consider them an EP, or basically updating people about the way we feel now after the tipping point. So it's updating, how we are now. And so we put those 4 tracks first. We felt they were like an EP, and then after that is the 18 live tracks.
Well, some of the songs are as old, if not older, like Astronaut, than some of the songs on the tipping point. But the tipping point had a theme and a narrative, and there were certain songs, for instance, there's 2 songs on the tipping point, Please Be Happy and the title track, which were written about my late wife. There are 2 tracks in the 4 that are written about my new wife, and I've been married 4 years, so you can't have them on the same album. Well, we were on tour in America, so it was going to be America. And I guess when it was suggested that the show be filmed, our first instinct was Hollywood Bowl. Of course, that would have been amazing. It would also have been the last show, so they could have really gone for it. But that proved to be too difficult union-wise. And so it was our manager, Sarah, who said, what about this place in Tennessee, Franklin, Tennessee? She'd been there. She knew of it. It's a beautiful place. It has all the rocks. You can light up the rocks. So that's why we said yes. Well, that's a good question. And you'll get different answers from both of us. Okay. The point about the Nervous Planet is not the conflicts that are going on, not the political concerns, not the ecological disaster, but it's how that information is given to you. Okay? So Songs for a Nervous Planet comes from a book by Matt Haig called Notes on a Nervous Planet. Songs. Yeah. So, and that book talks about, for instance, he says things like, I'm on Twitter, I'm having an argument with someone who lives 5,000 miles away, and I'm getting wound up about it. So the point is, so no matter what your concerns are, how are you getting the information? Is the information coming across in a sort of neutral, calm way? Are you actually reading about it in a book? How well do you know this problem that you're talking about? And the causes of it. So it's about how you get the information, which is generally on social media nowadays, the kids, and they don't think about things. They immediately plump for a side. Yeah, the side that looks maybe the most liberal, that seems to be supporting the underdog, but it's just not that simple.
That's how the algorithm works. You get fed more of the same stories. Regular news, be that broadcast TV news, radio news, whatever, followed suit because they realize that gets the most clicks, that gets the most views. If I were to look and be brutally honest about what I think is the biggest concern, none of the things that people are talking about. It's the wealth gap. I would say that's the biggest concern.
Between the two of us?
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. No, in the sense that most of all the problems that, get sort of blown out of proportion are taking a lot of people's eye off the ball for me, if I want to talk politically, which is the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And, you're talking about housing problems, that's the reason. But no one's really talking about that because they're feeding disinformation or amplifying information so that no one starts thinking about that. It's their fault. Blame them. It's not the fact that we're keeping all the money and not sharing it with you. So it's, it's deflection a lot of the time, I feel. But that's my personal opinion.
Oh, I've heard about the wealth gap for a while, actually.
Well, the wealth gap is so huge. I mean, so much greater than it's ever been. When you're making music, it's really not something you think about, how it's going to affect someone else. Your thoughts are solely on how it affects you. And I don't mean that necessarily in a selfish way. I think that that's the most honest you can be. It's really what you need to do. And when we go in and make a record, we do it for our own benefit, in the hope that maybe other people will relate to it. So that's kind of a bonus for us if other people do relate to it, and it does help people. And I won't deny the fact that when people come up to us and say, the hurting helped me get through college. I felt suicidal and that helped me. Does that make us feel good? Yes, absolutely. Did we do it for that reason? No, we did it for our own benefit. But that certainly is gratifying when you hear that it does affect people in a positive way.
Her biggest love in music is The Cure. This is kind of like, no, it's not even annoying, but it's and she says just listen to his lyrics. This guy is writing about his wife. Those lyrics are absolutely beautiful. It's also very charming, I think, when Van Morrison or who's the other guy?
Who are you thinking of?
Canadian guy.
Brian,
no.
Neil Young.
Neil Young, thank you. Why
did I go immediately to Brian Adams? No,
Justin Bieber. Yeah. So Neil Young. It's incredibly charming when older males confess their love. I think it's quite charming.
Yeah. That's not our own. Well, the Gary Jules, Michael Andrews version, and the reason being, and, we've discussed, various different cover versions of our songs, and the ones we always tend to find the most interesting, and it's the case with the Gary Jules, Michael Andrews version, where the recording is far more in line with the lyric. And the lyric to Mad World is, pretty dark, and the recording of their version is very dark. The same, for Lord's version of Everybody Wants to Rule the World, it's a much darker version. We tend to couch what are darker or deeper lyrics in quite up-tempo or upbeat backing tracks that feel a bit happier. It was never really an intentional thing on our behalf, I don't think. I don't think we ever sat down and said, oh, these lyrics are a bit, dark. Let's make the backing track happy so that it doesn't sound as dark. I think it was just the way we are and the way we work.
Suscríbete y entérate de todo.